right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our ergonomics talk organized by Physio Asia Therapy Center. My name is Shannon, and I'm here with my colleague Adrian. So, both of us are physiotherapists. I'm from Singapore, and he's joining us all the way from the Philippines. And today, we're going to talk to you about how to sit well when working from home and the importance of staying mobile. So, currently, due to the global pandemic that's affecting the world, a large portion of us have been forced to work from home. And as a result of that, many of us have started experiencing aches and pains throughout the body. So these are some of the common aches and pains that people who work from home typically complain of. So just a show of hands, how many of us are suffering from one of these conditions? Okay, I see a few hands here and there. Okay, so yeah, these are some of the common conditions, things like neck soreness, tension headaches, upper back pain, forearm soreness, tingling in the wrist and even the back, and even some backache. So why is it that there's a sudden onset of these aches and pains, which we may not have had when we were working in the office? Our posture when working from home may be contributing to some of these symptoms. So unlike in the office where we may have ergonomic chairs and well set up workstations, these are the things that we may not typically have at home. So we end up adopting poor postures in various places, such as at our dining table, when we're working from the sofa, or when we're even working from the bed, because they kind of feel comfortable to us. However, prolonged sitting in these postures are actually detrimental to our muscles and joints, and that's why it's important for us to talk about good sitting when working from home. So let's take a look at the most common posture that people fall into when working from home. So this would be the slump sitting posture that we normally adopt at the desk, as you can see on the picture on the screen of myself. So this is a posture that a lot of us tend to instinctively adopt because it feels comfortable to us. But as you can see by the number of red lines, it opens up the possibilities of developing problems in many, many areas. So let's go through some of these problems. Starting from the top, you can see that my head is kind of sticking forward in front of the rest of my body. So this is actually a very common source of neck and shoulder pains. So ideally, we want our posture to be such that our head is directly over the rest of our body. But this is rarely the case, right? So with every inch that our head sits forward in front of our body, the head gains an extra 4.5 kg. So if your head were to be 3 inches off its center, that's an additional 13.5 kg that your head weighs. So where does this weight go? Well, this weight needs to then be carried and supported by your neck muscles. So now your neck muscles are basically working harder than they need to, and they'll fatigue faster, resulting in tightening of the muscles just to carry that extra load. So now these muscles are tired, they can't work as well as they did before, so they result to just tightening and holding in that position to grip onto your head. So if this tightening of the muscles goes on for a prolonged period of time, what happens is it starts to hold the joints close together. So it starts to compress the joints, and that can result in stiffness in your neck joints. So a combination of the tightness in your muscles and the stiffness in your neck muscle joints can then lead to neck pain or even tension headaches like we discussed earlier. So going back to the picture, apart from the head, we can also see that my shoulders are rounded forward over the rest of my body. So in this position, the chest muscles tend to get tight and hold the shoulders and arms in a forward rounded position. So when the arms and the shoulders are rounded forward, there's a lot of compression in the shoulder joints. The space in the shoulder is narrowed and limited. So when we're doing certain actions or exercises or when we're carrying weights, it increases the risk of compression in the joint and can lead to shoulder problems. So next we can see that I'm sitting in the middle of the chair rather than sitting all the way back. So because of that, my mid back and my lower back are unsupported. So even if when I started sitting, I started in a good upright posture, over time when we're sitting for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, the back muscles will fatigue. And what we do is we'll end up in the slumped position with a rounded C-shaped back. So the mid-back rounds, the lower back becomes flat, and that can potentially lead to back stiffness and pain. So looking at my wrists, we can also see that they're kind of bent at an awkward angle to type, and when they're in this position for a long period of time, it increases the pressure on the wrist joints. On top of that, if we continuously use the mouse and keyboard without taking any break, we are increasing the risk of straining and injuring our forearm muscles, which can then lead to pain and even neurological symptoms such as tingling. Okay, next we can look at the thighs. So you can see that I'm sitting cross-legged with my right leg crossed over my left leg. So if we do this for a prolonged period of time, we may develop tightness in our thigh and hip muscles, which can then lead to knee pain or even hip pain. Okay, so if this is the wrong way of sitting, how exactly should we be sitting? So ideally, when we sit or stand, we're aiming to maintain a neutral posture. So what is a neutral posture? Basically, a neutral posture is the position in which there is the least amount of strain to your joints and muscles. So this ensures that movements and activities are done efficiently and with the least amount of strain or risk to injury. So this neutral posture is achieved in sitting when our earlobes, the tip of our shoulders, and the hips are in line. So if we look back at my sitting posture at the desk just now, and we draw a vertical line from my ear down, we can actually see that my shoulders and hips are lying behind this line. So I'm not sitting in a neutral posture. So what exactly does that mean? So it means that I'm in a position where there's an excessive amount of strain and stress on my muscles and joints in my spine, and that increases the risk of injury. All right. So with the knowledge of neutral postures, let's look at how we should sit and set up a workstation at home. So the first thing we want to do is to make sure that the screen is at least an arm's length away so that we can protect our eyes as well. Next, we're going to make sure that the top of the screen is at least 5 centimeters below eye level. So this is to make sure that our neck isn't placed in a bent or a forward protruded position, which may then lead to neck tightness and stiffness. So if you're using a laptop at home and the screen is too low, what you can actually do is to get a couple of books and magazines, stack them up and place them under the laptop so that you can elevate it to eye level. And if you're doing that, if you're going to use the books to elevate the laptop, if you're going to use your wrist and try and type on the keyboard, it's going to be at a very awkward angle, worse than what it was when I showed you just now. So what you can do is to use an external mouse and an external keyboard so that you can keep your wrist in a nice, relaxed position. So for the wrist itself, we don't need it to be completely straight. What we're looking for is actually a slight bit of extension of about 10 to 15 degrees. The next thing we want is to make sure that we're seated all the way back into the chair. So we're making sure that that lower back and that mid back is in contact with the chair so that it's nice and supported and the muscles can relax and they don't have to be constantly on when you're sitting down and working. So because most of the chairs at home, like our dining chairs, they don't have lumbar supports like some of those that we have in the office, the tendency for us will be to still slouch from our lower back, and that kind of puts us at a risk of developing lower back pain. So what we can do, one simple solution is to take a towel, roll it up and place it at the small of the back when we're sitting down just to maintain that forward curve in the lower back. Okay. So next we want to keep our elbows by the side of our body and we want to keep them at 90 degrees. So if you do have a chair with arm support, you can use those to support your arms so that the upper body is nice and relaxed as well. Okay, next we also want our hips and knees to be bent to about 90 degrees. And something else we want to take note of is that there should be a 3-finger spacing between the front of the chair and the back of the knee. So this is basically to ensure that the nerves that run through the back of the knee are not compressed and compromised. And the last thing we want to take note of is to make sure that both feet should be placed flat and firmly on the ground. So if you're sitting on a chair that's too high and it can't be adjusted, you can use objects around you like boxes, a stack of magazines, or a stack of newspapers to help to elevate the legs so that your hips and knees will be maintained at a 90-degree angle. So now that we've gone through the correct sitting posture at the desk, we're going to have Adrian demonstrate an improper sitting posture, and we're going to correct his sitting as well as his work setup step by step. So all of you watching and listening in now, you can actually follow along with the steps, practice the steps, and feel how it is like to sit with the proper posture. So I'm going to put Adrian on screen now. Okay, so all of you should be able to see Adrian. So if you can't find his picture, his video, it's the one with the blue polo t-shirt named Physio Asia Therapy Center. Okay, so to start with, we can kind of see that Adrian is sitting halfway forward in his chair with his back unsupported and rounded. His head is sticking forward over the rest of the body and his leg is crossed. So first of all, Adrian, I'm going to get you to uncross your leg and place both your feet on the ground. Okay, very good. So now we've got a good base of support. Next, I want you to scoot your buttock backwards so that your middle and lower back are in contact with the back of the chair. Good. So scoot all the way back. Make sure we're sitting tall and the middle and the lower back are in contact with the chair. So you can kind of move your chair forward a little bit. It's a bit too far back. That's good. Okay, and because your chair is fixed at a slight backward angle, what I'm going to get you to do is to place a pillow behind your back to support you. Good. Okay, now what I'm going to get you to do is to take a towel, roll it up and place it at the small of your back. And this is just going to support the lower back and maintain the natural forward curve in your lower back. Very good. So you can see he's placed the white towel there. Okay. Next thing, now you can see his shoulders are still kind of rounded and rolled forward over the rest of his body. So Adrian, what I want you to do is to draw your shoulder blades together. So just gently move them back together just to open up the chest and ensure that the shoulders aren't rounding forward. Good. So you can see his shoulders kind of opening up a bit and moving backwards. Okay. So next, we can still see that his head is kind of poking forward over the rest of his body. So to get the neutral posture, we want the head to be a little bit further backwards. So how we're going to realign that is, Adrian, I'm going to get you to place your fist underneath your chin with knuckles facing to your throat and your arm brought up to the side at 90 degrees. Good. Next, you're going to gently rest your chin onto your fist. Okay. And slightly put some pressure. Good. Gently nod down, put some pressure on your fist, and remove the fist down by your side. Good. Okay. So compared to before, we can see that the head is tucked in gently. So we don't want a very forceful retraction and bringing back of the neck. So using the fist method is a good way for us to estimate how to tuck our chins in. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is to make sure that the screen is at least an arm's length away. So Adrian, you can stick your arm in front of you, just check if the screen is at least an arm's length away. Yep, that's good. Okay. Next, we also want to make sure that the top of your screen is at least 5 cm below your eye level. So with your chin tucked in, like the chin tuck you performed earlier, you should be able to see the entire screen without having to tilt your head up or tilt your head down. So Adrian, for you, it seems like your monitor is a little bit low. It seems like it's more than 5 cm. So what I'm going to get you to do is to place a box or some books under your monitor just to elevate it a little bit. Okay, that's much better. Okay, I can also see that your chair is a little bit low, and that's kind of causing your wrist to go into a bit of extension more than what we want. So what I'm going to get you to do is to sit on a folded pillow or on some folded towels just to raise the height of your chair a bit. Yep, so Adrian, you can get a folded pillow or a folded towel, and we're going to sit on that just to lift the height of the chair. Very good. So Adrian's going to sit on the pillow. He's going to place the roll towel at the lower part, at the small of the back to give that lumbar support. And one more pillow at the back just to support the mid back as well. Okay, that's good. So your wrist is in a better position now, but your elbows are still a bit far from the body. So what I want you to do is to move the chair a little bit closer forward towards the desk. So we want to try and keep the arms at about 90 degrees. Good. That's good. So arms at about 90 degrees. And apart from that, we also want to keep the inner parts of the elbow close towards the body. So we don't want them open wide like a chicken wing. We want to keep them close towards the body. Very good. Okay. So I also want you to take note that when you're holding the mouse and the keyboard, your wrist should be straight and in line with the body. So Adrian is demonstrating now to the screen. So a lot of us, when we tend to use the mouse, we either tilt the wrist inwards towards the left or we tilt the wrist outwards towards the right. So we don't want that because it's going to put added strain on your muscles in the forearm. It's going to increase the stress in the joints. So keep the arm and the wrist in line with the rest of your forearm. Okay, great. We're almost done. So now that you're sitting on the pillow, your feet might not be in contact with the ground, and we can kind of see that the hips and knees aren't really at 90 degrees. So what I'm going to get you to do is to place your feet on some books or newspapers so that we can get your hips and knees to about 90 degrees. So you can see Adrian here doesn't really have any books or newspapers. He's actually using a few mats just to lift the legs up. So in the same way, you can use items around you, either to lift the legs up, to give a bit of support. So just play around with objects that you have around you. All right, so that's a much better posture and setup than what we started with. So the same thing when you're at home, when you're trying this, you can just, whether you're adjusting your laptop height or your chair height or the leg height, just play around with the objects that you have around you and see what you can use to get the best posture. All right, thank you, Adrian. I'm going to change it back to the presentation again. Okay, so now going back to the slides, we're going to look at some of the other common places that we tend to sit and do our work at. So one of these is on the bed. So looking at my photo, you can see that I'm kind of sitting on the bed with my legs crossed, my lower back unsupported, my mid back is in that rounded position, and my head is sticking forward in a very uncomfortable, stuck and cramped position. So all of which cause similar problems as the slump desk sitting that we showed at the start. So how can we actually position ourselves when working on the bed to prevent these stiffness and pains from developing? First, we have to make sure that we're sitting all the way back against the headboard so that the entire middle and lower back are in contact with the headboard. So next, just like we did with Adrian, we're going to place a roll towel at the small of the back just to provide support to the lower back. We'll also place a small pillow or roll towel under the knees just to provide a slight amount of bend in the knees. So we want that slight bend in the knees to prevent tightness from building up in the hamstring muscles, which are the muscles at the back of the thigh. So if those muscles tighten up as well, they're going to pull on the hips, which can then affect the back and lead to hip and back problems as well, which we don't want. So next, we'll use a pillow to elevate and support our laptop. So if you have a laptop tray, that works perfectly fine as well. But if you don't have that at home, a head pillow like what I'm using is perfectly suitable as well. So after we've gotten into this position, just like we did with Adrian, we're going to gently draw our shoulder blades back together just to get that upright sitting posture and to make sure that middle of our back is in contact with the headboard. And lastly, we're going to tuck our chin in gently. So we'll do it the same way we did with Adrian. So using your fist underneath your chin, let your chin rest on the fist, and you're going to gently put a bit of pressure through the chin, tuck the head in a little bit, and then you can put the fist back down. So that's basically how you can sit with the most amount of support when working on the bed. So the last area that we tend to sit and work at is the sofa. So as you can see in the picture, my posture isn't very ideal. So a lot of us, what we tend to do when we're working on the sofa, or even if we're just sitting normally without working, we tend to lean to one side. And if we have the long sofa, we sometimes tend to become like Cleopatra, or like completely resting and laying on the side. So apart from my trunk leaning to the right side, you can also see that because of that, my neck has to bend and rotate to the left to look at the screen. So you can also see that my left shoulder is kind of elevated just to make up for that sideways bend. My right leg is also crossed over the left. And the last thing that may not be very obvious, but because my sofa is quite deep, there's no gap between the front of the sofa and the back of my knee, which can kind of compress and irritate the nerves that pass through the back of the knee. And that can cause an irritation of the nerves, which result in tingling and tingling sensations in your leg or feet. So how can we improve on this posture if we have to work on the sofa? So first off, what we're going to do is we're going to place a pillow behind our back, and that's going to serve two functions. So first, that's going to help to create a gap between the back of the knee and the sofa. And the second function of the pillow is just to make sure that the back is nice and supported, and it's going to prevent the back from going into that slumped position. So the next thing we're going to do is to make sure that our trunk is positioned in the middle of the sofa and that we're not leaning to one side or the other. So similar to the posture on the bed, we want to place a roll towel at the small of the back. So it's not very obvious here, but we're using that same roll towel at the lower back to maintain that natural curve in the lower back to support it. And just like we did when we were on the bed, we can use a pillow to help to elevate and support our laptop. So lastly, if your feet are dangling and aren't firmly supported on the ground, you can stack a bunch of newspapers like I have, or use magazines, or place a box under the feet just to keep the hips and knees at about 90 degrees and just to support your body nicely. Okay, so these are kind of the common postures that we adopt when working from home and the changes that we can make to improve them as best as possible to minimize injuries. Okay, so lastly, we're going to talk about the importance of taking a break. So now I want you to imagine that all the joints in your body are kind of like cogs in a wheel, which are turning every time you move. So with regards to the cog wheel, if you don't use them for a long period of time, what happens is they start to rust. And once they become rusted, it becomes very difficult to turn the cog wheel. So in the same way, if we're going to stay in one position for a long period of time, be it 30 minutes or 45 minutes, this can cause your muscles and joints to tighten and stiffen, and that increases the chances of injuries to subsequent movements because your muscles and your joints now have to work even harder just to do the same amount of movements. And that's why it's important to take a break every 30 minutes when working. But what tends to happen is that people often get consumed in their work and they forget to take regular breaks. So a very simple workaround is just to set a timer or a reminder on your phone every 30 minutes just to get up and move. So it can be something as simple as standing up to get a drink, or petting your dog, or checking on your children, or even doing some simple stretches or mobility exercises. So to end off the talk, Adrian is going to demonstrate some of these very basic and easy mobility exercises that you can do at home at your desk itself when you're taking these breaks every half an hour. So I'm going to switch the screen back to Adrian. So we're going to run through 5 very easy exercises. Please feel free to follow along with us, try out the exercises, see how it feels. So when you're working from home, what you can do is just do each of these exercises 5 times every hour. So that's only going to take you like 2 or 3 minutes. So remember to just set a reminder on your phone to remind yourself to get up and do a bit of these exercises and movements. So Adrian, the sunrise salute one more time. Palms together in front of us. Lift the arms straight and all the way up. Good. And we're going to open the palms up by the side, stretch the chest, and back to the middle. Okay, and from the front view, side view, palms together, lifting them up all the way, opening the fists up, stretching out and back. Okay, good. We're going to do the second exercise. So the pull aparts, like Adrian did just now, you're going to close your fists, keep them together in front of you. Now you're going to straighten your elbows, open your shoulders outwards all the way. You're going to bring your wrists back as much as you can, and then you're going to open your fingers one by one from the pinky all the way up to your thumb. So this is a good exercise to give us a nice stretch for the nerve pathway along the arm and the forearm. And it also helps to stretch the muscle and the fascia in our arms as well. So a nice stretch for the arms, especially because we're doing so much typing in the day, we're using the mouse for such long periods of time. Okay, great. The next exercise we're going to do is the seated cat and camel exercise. So we'll start by placing our hands on the table. Okay, and we're going to slide our palms forward along the table and let the back relax and round. So you're letting it relax, round, and we're getting that stretch through that back. And once we're there, we're going to slide our arms back towards us. We're going to sit up tall and we're going to gently arch the back. Good. And we're going to repeat again. So this is going to help us get some movement throughout the entire spine and prevent that stiffness that typically builds up in the mid back or the lower back. Okay, very good. All right, so the second last exercise we're going to do is some simple sit to stand exercises. So the first step is always to make sure we're scooting forward in the chair. So we don't want to be sitting all the way back in. So make sure you bring the buttock at least halfway forward in the chair. Okay, you're going to bend forward from the hips. And the important step now is to keep your chin and your head tilted downwards. with your nose in front of your toes and push yourself up. So Adrian, try and keep that head tilted down slightly, nose in front of the toes. Good. And bend the hips, push yourself up. Good. And when you're sitting back down, you're going to stick that buttock backwards and sit down. Good. And the last exercise we're going to do is some simple calf raises. So standing up, so you can hold onto the desk if you need a little bit of support. And we're going to simply raise both our heels off the ground slowly, hold it there for a quick second, and come back down slowly. Okay, so the purpose of these exercises isn't so much to strengthen the muscles, but rather to get the body moving and get the blood circulating, just to break that chain of inactivity and to prevent that stiffness from building up in your joints and muscles. All right, so 5 very simple exercises. It won't take you more than 2 or 3 minutes, but it's going to help you in the long run with making sure that everything doesn't get tight and stiff as well. All right, thank you, Adrian. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the presentation. So with that, we've actually come to the end of today's talk. So I hope you've all learned something about posture when working from home. So if you'd like to learn more stretches and more strengthening exercises that you can do at home to prevent these aches and pains from developing, please feel free to join us at the same time on Wednesday and Friday. So we'll be going through different content each week, so there's always something new to learn. So you can actually sign up for each class for each individual week. So if you haven't registered yet for the other sessions, please do so. Also, if you want to find out more about other ergonomic positions, such as how best to sleep to prevent neck pain and back pain, what's the best lifting postures to prevent back pain, or if you want to rewatch this session again, you can check out our YouTube channel, either by scanning the QR code or doing a YouTube channel search for Physio Asia Therapy Center. And I hope you've learned something about your posture and home ergonomics. And what we've gone through today can actually even be applied at home, even when you're not working. So if you're eating at the dining table, or you're reading on the bed, or you're just sitting down and binge watching TV, the same ergonomics apply. So you can use the same things that you've learned today for the other things you do at home. It doesn't just have to be for work. So it's good to keep in mind what we've learned today for the various tasks that we're doing at home. So once again, I want to thank each one of you for joining us today, and we hope to see all of you on Wednesday for our stretching session. So thank you and good night.